Can everybody shut their phones, please? There's a lot of talking going on in the background, and it's please mute yourself. And before we start going into chapter 3, there's some extensive background I have to read to you and go through with you so that we can understand exactly what's happening here. Could we please mute whatever's going on in the background? It's terribly, terribly annoying. It's in my ear. Please. Please, everybody, mute yourself. I keep asking, and it's annoying. All right, chapter 3 opens. You have to understand that when we left up chapter 2, 3 months have now passed. 90 days, 3 months have passed. This is important to understand from a halachic point of view. From a halachic point of view, I don't know what's going on. I've read them. Am I stopping them? I've said it half a dozen times.
I can't hear you because people are moved. There's all kinds of noises.
I can't speak because there's also all kinds of noises too. Please, everybody, mute yourself. It's terribly, terribly annoying to my ear. Please. Please, everybody, mute yourself. I can't sleep. All right, chapter 3 opens. You have to understand when we went to chapter 2. 3 months is now past. 90 days, 3 months past. This is important to understand from a halachic point of view. And it's getting. All right, let's. We'll be with you in a second, please. I'm just going to go. Want me to call? Yeah. Okay, let's go. So 90 days has passed. In the end of chapter 2, from a halachic standpoint of view, this is important because a convert. Somebody went in to get her already. Somebody went in to get her already. From a halachic standpoint, a convert or a widow must wait a full 90 days before they can get married to rule out the pregnancy by another man. So Ruth is in a 90-day period of waiting. Boaz is in a 90-day period of waiting also because we said when Ruth came into Bethlehem, Boaz was burying his wife. Right? Yeah.
I'm sorry, is there something wrong with the internet?
For 90 days after her conversion. Okay? To make sure that, okay? During this period of time, this 90-day period, Ruth has been providing for Naomi daily by heading out to Boaz's fields to continue to perform the mitzvah of leket. Remember, leket, we said, is the process by which a poor person can get food from the droppings of the people who are working out in the fields. Naomi, on her part, has observed a growing interest in Ruth by Boaz. Boaz has this 90-day period in time to observe the midos of Ruth, a modesty in gleaning and a continued willingness to rise early and glean for her mother-in-law. So before I want to go into this, let's go through the halachas of Yibum. which is going to play a very, very important part in our Pasha, the halachas of Yibum, right? First of all, we should all need to understand that Yibum, for those who don't understand the Hebrew, Yibum is the idea that if a man dies childless, and his wife under Jewish law is prohibited from remarrying other than the brother of the deceased man. The brother must step up and perform Yibum. Now, this Yibum is not contracted with, generally like a normal marriage would be contracted with. It is the duty of the woman to approach the man. It seems to have straightened itself out. Right? I'm not getting any feedback, so it must be quiet.
Go ahead, keep talking.
Yeah. Right. Woman must approach the man and request Yibum. The Yibum himself cannot have any, I'm searching for words here, romantic involvement in his approaching his brother's wife. This is something that has to be done with Shem Shemayim. There can't be any lust involved. There can't be any sexual desires involved. It has to be done purely with Shem Shemayim. All right? Yibum is an exception to the laws. Yibum is an exception to the laws forbidding sexual relations between close families.
Somebody better.
Okay.
For a widow, just wait for 90 days.
That's
me feeding.
That's me.
There's
sorry,
something wrong with the internet.
So as I said, the law Yibum mandates that the surviving brother marry his widow for the purpose of producing an heir, both to sustain the name and landed portion of the dead man. Any child that the Levite couple has does not belong to the surviving brother. But it's a kind of reincarnation of the deceased for purposes of retaining his landed portion and sustaining his name in Israel. What the Torah was concerned about, okay, was a person dying and is without children and his name being wiped out in Israel and in an agricultural society where everything was done by land, losing his portion, his chelik is lost forever, right? The surviving brother, as we're going to be calling it, is known as the Yavam, okay, or Redeemer, because he redeems his brother's name from extinction and his landed portion for his heirs, right? This is both a commandment and an act of chesed for the surviving brother to step up as a redeemer in such a situation. The Torah says that this is one of the highest acts of chesed. Right?
When did that stop that?
So Yibum, as we learned in the story of Yehuda and Tamar, was something that was practiced by all cultures, Jewish and non-Jewish cultures, a lot before Matan Torah, and once and during the time of Yehuda, it was any male relative could perform Yibum, any male relative. The Torah, when it came along, limited it only to brothers. So in other words, after the Torah was given, Yehuda could not have had the relationship with Tamar that he had because it became a forbidden relation, right? So the Torah came and limited it only to the brothers. However, as we'll see, because it's a very important question which we will get to, okay, Boaz was not a brother of Naomi, so he was not responsible to perform Yibum. Yet we have this whole story that Boaz was, asked to perform Yibum. So we'll discuss. I'll give you the answer now. I won't hold you in suspense. What had happened was the Torah, yes, said halachically it's only brothers, but as an act of chesed, it became, like we say, a moral responsibility for any male relative to step up. So while the Torah only mandated a brother, the custom in Israel became that people like uncles, cousins, any male would step up, provided that relationship was not prohibited halachically, right? In other words, the woman had the obligation was on the woman to approach the man, right? The obligation was on the woman to approach the man to request the evil, right?
The man was already married. You could have more than one.
At that time, yes, you could have more than one wife. You could have more than one wife. Right. He was not around yet, right? And many, and because there were men that refused to do that. Why? What happens if they had a wife and their wife would be very, very upset with, hey, I didn't want you going out, getting another child.
That's a one-time act.
Huh? It was a what?
One-time act.
Okay, my wife would not allow me to have a one-time act. I can tell you that right now. Even if it's L'Shem Shemai, she would not let me have a one-time act, right?
When did this stop? When is it no longer?
The two wives or the act of evil? The Yibum is still technically in effect now. There are communities that, in fact, do practice Yibum. Huh? No, Jewish communities that,
Nowadays?
yeah.
Well, again,
You could go, we were, I think, Bob, we were in Italy, right? We saw a chalitza shoe in a museum. There's chalitza shoes that are around.
Police is still in effect.
Chalitza's in effect. Right, but why do you do, so why would you do chalitza if there was no yibum?
that's right.
Because that's the rabbi's instituted. If there's no yibum, one way to have no yibum and still be halachic, okay.
Doesn't make sense. No, doesn't make sense. So the question now becomes, what happens if the man, and I will get into the chapter shortly, but what happens if the man now refuses to perform yibum to the woman, right?
Exactly what happened here.
Okay. So in the event that a brother or a kinsman, a relation, refuses to redeem under Levit law, he renounces his right as a yavam through a vehicle known as chalitza, called a shoe ceremony, for want of a better word, chalitza. Okay? This is generally has been done. I'm just giving you some background so we can understand what's going to happen when we get into the chapter. All right? The formal renunciation is done in the presence of a Beit Din. You have to have 10 people, 10 men on a Beit Din, okay? And it's started at the instigation of the woman. The woman then has to, request that this chalitza ceremony will be performed, all right? The redeeming kinsman is given every chance to change his mind, okay? But if he categorically refuses his duty, he says, Lo chafatzti lekachto, right? I do not want to marry her, okay? At which point, the woman approaches him in full view of the Beit Din. She takes his shoe from his foot, okay, spits in his face, okay, and there's a formula, kacha yeyoselo ish, right, ashaloyi boneh, okay. This chalitza is considered to be a public disgrace, and it's done by the woman. Now, the purpose of chalitza also is this ceremony now frees the woman to get on with her life. Okay? Until chalitza, the woman is, for want of a better word, considered almost like an aguna.
Being almana is not enough.
Being an almana is not enough. Right. All right?
Not enough.
Apparently, it's not enough because what the Torah was mainly concerned about was the soul of the brother.
Yeah.
Okay? The brother. Right?
What happens if the man wants to perform the service and the woman says no way?
Ah, good question.
But she doesn't ask for it,
Then-
she cannot do it. If she doesn't ask for it, she cannot do it.
That is correct. She may find the brother-in-law so odious that she says, I don't want to go near him. In which case she is then confining herself to almost like being an aguna. Now, what would happen if she gets married? I don't know what would happen if she got married to somebody else, right?
Well,
But,
by not redeeming her deceased husband's land, she loses everything belonging to her deceased husband.
Correct. She's then, by not going through the chalitza ceremony, she is condemning herself to a life of poverty.
Yeah, but if she marries somebody else,
Who is getting the land? It's her land with her husband. He died, he's supposed to still have the land, no?
So according to the halacha of, I don't want to get into all this. According to the halacha of inheritance, the brother has inherited the land. The brother of deceased is the next in line to inherit, right?
And she has not,
And he,
She has
she
no
has
right.
not.
she has no, this we're talking about, this is the way it was, okay?
the husband has
Till no slapshot came on and then they changed it.
If there's no child,
to live.
All right, let's not get bogged down, please.
the woman is a child, she inherits the land.
Didn't they change it?
Correct, this is only talking about a woman who has no, okay, all right.
So how come not slapshot didn't have children, and why did they give him the land?
He had children, he had daughters.
Yeah, he had daughters, but.
So the halacha then was that daughters couldn't inherit. And because of what Beno Salofka did, Moshe changed the halacha to say that, yes, daughters could inherit.
Why couldn't they do it with the almana?
But they didn't.
I said no children.
Well,
No
why couldn't they do the
children.
same right for the woman, like the almana, like the children? Why couldn't they do that?
Because they did, and you have to go talk to the people who are around.
The woman did not become part of the family, that's just true.
So there's a medrash that talks about this recent chalitza, all right? It's a medrash again, so you'll have to bear with me, okay? All right? The soul of the childless husband, it says, the medrash, finds no rest either in the hereafter or in the world as we know it here. There's a soul that's wandering around. The dead brother, the dead husband, his soul is wandering around. Right? Needs to find protection in the physical body of a man who will stand in his place and sire a child in his name. Right? Like a shoe. Why do they use a shoe? A shoe is unfulfilled until it finds its proper resting place. So too the soul is unfulfilled until it finds its proper resting place. Now this is all Kabbalah. If you believe in souls migrating or transmigrating, whatever the word is, from one person to another person, then you can buy into this, all right? Okay. In Ruth's case, now let's talk about Ruth. Yeah, Ruth is a little bit different, all right? In Ruth's case, both her husband Machlon and his brother Chilion have died, right? They're both not here on the scene anymore. So a true version of Yibum is not possible. Can't do it, right? It's a brother, right? But custom in Israel allowed for an extended version of Yibum so that the nearest male kinsman was permitted to step into the shoes of the deceased and perform Yibum with his widow in order to preserve his name and inheritance. Okay? From Naomi's perspective, she considers Boaz, okay, as Migoalenuhu. He is going to be the one. and we'll talk about what the difference between a Yibum and a Goel. All right, we're going to do that too. Right? All right. Naomi is not saying that in this that Boaz is the Redeemer or is the Yibum, but he is a possible Yibum. Right? So what's happened is that according to the Torah, it's a brother and it limits it only to a brother. But custom became such that there was a chesed extended to the widow that she should not be without a male support, because in those days, males supported women. That's the way society was built. That morally, it was accepted in society that a close relative of the widow stepped in and performed Yibum, provided that the union was permitted halachically, right? Like an uncle could marry a niece, a cousin could marry a cousin, right? A brother cannot marry a sister. A father-in-law cannot marry his daughter-in-law, right? Okay. Skip that. All right. So now we can start. With all this background, now we can start chapter 3, right? So now it's Naomi sees that Rus is going out every day in the field. She's working, she's picking, she's carrying the food back, she's supporting her. And Naomi has reached the conclusion that this situation should not continue. Ruth is a younger woman. Torah says she is 40 at the time that this whole story takes place. She has not lost her beauty. Okay? And Naomi realizes that this situation cannot go on. In a sense, Ruth is almost indentured to Naomi. She's taken sole responsibility for her support. So Naomi is stepping up to the plate. And she says, I want to find you someone, Noach. Noach is, by all the interpreters say, Noach is marriage, right? Because with marriage comes a certain feeling of rest, menucha, right? So Naomi is saying, want to now find for you some marriageable situation, right? And she says, Viata, now, hello, Boaz Modatonu. We have a close relative by the name of Boaz, right? Huh?
1946.
I'm on chapter 3, page pasuk number 2. Hello, Boaz Modatonu. What, Boaz? He said his name Boaz, in him is strength.
I'm talking about Modatanu.
Oh, Modatonu, the word Modatonu. Okay. Asher Yisu es Narosab. You know Boab because you've been involved with his family, with picking, with say in the field. Okay. Ineu Zora es Hagoran Asyor Maloila. Tonight he is going to. This is the end of the harvest season. They've already picked and packed and all their belongings. The harvest is over with, right? And Boaz is going to be on the barley floor, on the floor of the threshing floor tonight. Okay? And she says something very, very bold to her now. Okay, I want you to start thinking now about. You said these stories are all connected. Lot and his daughters, Tamar. Start thinking in those as we go across here.
That's really a very strange measure. You could have come back to him and talked to him.
We will answer that question. Yes, we will answer that question very shortly. Ada is asked the question, if Naomi wanted to arrange her meeting between Boaz and Rus, why didn't she just go to Boaz and say, I have a match for you, right? So she says now to Rus as follows, Birachatzt, I want you to bathe yourself. Okay? I'll say that this was that part of being converted is to going to mikvah. And when Rus came in,
But she already was converted.
but she didn't have mikvah.
Other than
Berachatzt, you should wash yourself. Besacht, and anoint yourself. Okay? Samtsim, what's that word there?
same lotaya.
Why doesn't it say it?
Same lotaya.
Why doesn't it say it? Look at the Kari and the Kasiv.
That's it.
Look at it. We're going to see what it's,
It does say same lotaya.
yeah?
It says same lotaya. What is the problem? It says same lotaya.
Look at Sim, how is your
It
Sim?
says same lotaya.
Yeah, but how is it printed? Is it, do you have two? I have,
Same lotaya. What's your problem?
Should be simlatech.
come here, no, come. I'll show you the problem. Come. There's a Ksiv and a Kri here. See?
Here it says same lotaya. But here it says same lotaya. Here is the yud. So it's same lotaya.
Okay? It's not there in all, it's all spelled different in a lot of things, okay? V'yorat hagoren. V'yorat hagoren. I have a Ksiv and a Kri, okay?
There's a star on it.
V'yorat hagoren. Go down to where he's sleeping, go down to the threshing floor. Al tivodi. Don't make yourself known. Al tivodi li'ish ad kaloso lechol lishtos. Wait till the party is over, then you go down and you reveal yourself. Okay? Okay. Why would Naomi pick Boaz? It was a closer relative. Look at your, you have a genealogy chart they made up for you. There's a closer relative. Look at it. Okay, why would she then focus on Boaz?
She liked
No,
him
because she
better.
knew he's not going to leave home. The other
She
one is
liked
convert.
him
How did she know it?
Yes.
Ah, okay.
She liked him better.
Boaz was a rich man, the most powerful man.
Right, so she wanted the
Smart
rich man.
mother-in-law.
There was a problem here, right? What was the major problem that we have to face here?
Somebody else is the mind.
There's somebody
Moav, below Moav, below Moaviyor. Remember that whole question? She was a Moaviyor. And what was the practice at that time? You couldn't marry, right? Who was the one that was the head of the Beit Din that allegedly would know the halacha, or who had the power at that time to teach the changing halacha to everybody? It was Boaz.
Yeah,
That
but she
was
was not
Boaz.
a Moabian anymore. She
Huh?
was already converted. She was not a Moabian, she was Jewish.
I understand, but a Moaviyor, could she convert?
She changed zip code. She was not a Moabian anymore.
But the halacha was, at that time, is understood. It was one of the halachas that was lost. It was one of the halachas that was lost. You know why? We did that thing with, what was his name again? Osnia, remember?
Yeah.
That was one of the halachas. Also, from that time that the halacha was given in the Torah, nobody ever tried to test the halacha out. So since the halacha was never tested out, the psak on the halacha got lost.
The boss was our Betin.
Huh?
The boss was our Betin.
And Boaz was an Bezdin. So that's why you go to Boaz, all right? Instinctively, what's going to happen here, you're going to see that the question of what Naomi is telling Rus to do and what Rus is going to do soon is very, very questionable behavior. Questionable behavior, right? Okay? Naomi, and you're not going to like this, Okay? You're not going to like this.
I like everything you said.
No, you're not going to like this. Naomi saw that through Ruach HaKodesh, that this whole thing had to be done the way she was going to do it. That this had to be done just like Yehuda and Tamar, just like Lot and his daughters. That this had to be done by something that was very, very questionable. Okay?
Who said she had to work at Kodesh? The Gemara said that?
Yes, I wouldn't make it up. Okay. All right.
This was before Beit HaMikdash or after?
This is all before the Beit HaMikdash. David HaMelech hasn't even come on the scene yet. Okay.
Because we should follow Beit HaMikdash, we can worship the Sheikh Belektan.
So now I want to bring you down to Gemara and Shabbos. Okay. Here's the Gemara, Shabbos. Talking about this threshing floor we spoke about. What was the whole scene going on there? All right. So the Gemara says as follows. Kof Yod Gimel Omid Aleph, if anybody is home or here or wants to look it up. The threshing floor, the Gemara says, is a male enclave. And after the hours, the men would remain to guard their bundles. Remember, they had collected all the bundles. The situation on the floor with all the males there at night guarding their bundles would attract prostitutes to attract the men, because that's where the men were, and that's where the money was, and that's where the women would go. Okay? It's not a place that a decent woman would be found. And we're talking about Rus, and we're talking about Naomi, and Naomi is suggesting to Rus, that's where you're going tonight. That's where you're going tonight. Okay? Right? You can see now how all these stories I told you with questionable behavior, okay, bringing to David HaMelech, Lot and his daughters, Yehuda and Tamar, okay, and now here, she's telling Ruth to go into a place where a decent woman would never ever show her face. Okay? Naomi now also must convince Rus to step out of character. Remember, Rus accepted upon herself Gerus. She accepted the Jewish code of sexual morality, right? Modesty, tzniut, okay? All right? And Rus has accepted it. And now in one fell swoop, she is telling Rus, everything I told you, forget about. Go down there. That's where the men are. Okay, go there. Okay. So this is what the Gemara says, describing where she was sending her to. Huh?
And the continuation is?
Well, we know what's going to happen. Rus is going to go there. There is no continuation. That's where the Gemara stops. Okay. Well, the Gemara then will talk about what I said, that Naomi saw this through Ruach HaKodesh, that this is the way it has to play out. And the Gemara goes into a whole discussion, okay, is how could Naomi send Rus into such a situation? And the Gemara answers that there is times that this is done because how did Mordechai, we just read the Megillah, send Esther into a certain situation to go to Achashverosh, where she put her life on the line. So sometimes it has to be done.
That wasn't the same thing.
Okay.
The king demanded it.
The difference being, if Esther went to Achashverosh without permission, it was a death penalty.
That's right.
Here, there was no death penalty.
That's exactly what I'm saying. It's not the same.
It's the same. Okay. All right.
It's a sacrifice, either way.
All right. So Ada asked the question earlier. If Naomi wished to arrange a match between Boaz and Rus, the conventional approach would have been for her to speak to Boaz
Yes.
and suggest that as a relative and a redeemer, he wed Ruth. whom he personally knew to be a woman of valor. Right? If the match was truly from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it would have been completed that way also. Why did Rus have to go through everything that she went through? Why did Naomi instead, and we'll soon see, choose to expose both Rus and Boaz to temptation? We'll soon see what Rus does. Right? So the answer is that if Naomi would have approached Boaz one-on-one, Boaz would have had an easy answer for her. There's a closer relative. There's a closer relative. And there was a closer relative, all right? Okay? She wanted to make it difficult for Boaz to look Rus in the face, and when Rus is going to propose that you marry me, it becomes a little bit more difficult for Boaz to turn her down. Okay? The person most affected is there. Sometimes it's easier to send a message from somebody, rather than to deliver the message yourself. All right? The other thing was that she saw through Ruach HaKodesh, only part of it, that Rus was going to be the mother of royalty, but she did not know who the father was going to be. So she had a limited Ruach HaKodesh. All right? Okay. Now, I said we had a little discussion here, a little discrepancy here about the spelling of these words, a kesiv and a kri. And the personal pronoun, was left out, We're going to see various words, The kesiv and the kri was that Rus didn't agree to this right away. At the time it was proposed, Rus didn't agree to this, What Naomi was saying is, I will take the achrayus, the responsibility, on myself. That's why it's a kesiv and a kri, right? And we're going to find more words like that. Now Rus has a very difficult choice to make, right? She has a difficult choice to make, If she acts and does what Naomi has said to her, and Boaz says to her that this is not sneistic what you did. This is not proper what you did. And Boaz could say, I don't want you. Then what happens? She risks that, correct? She risks that. Not only that, if she goes down there and Boaz rejects her, not only she lost the potential goel, but her reputation is ruined. Look where she's going at night. She's getting all putzed. She's getting all dressed up. She's getting dressed up in such a way to entice Boaz to want to have some sort of a relationship with her. If Boaz rejects her, she's also ruined her reputation.
But it was night. The question is, could you really see how beautiful she looks on her? It was night. It was dark.
Well, we'll soon see. We'll soon see what happens. All right. The other hand, if she doesn't do this, she doesn't do this. What is she doing, Rus? She's subjecting herself to a life of poverty. There will be no goel. There will be no yavam, right? So she has a tremendous choice to make now, Rus. It's not open and closed. If she does not act, she will live her life as an unredeemed almana, right? And she will not be free to get on with her life. So that's the choice now facing Rus, right? All right.
She wasn't free to marry anyone else.
No, because they had a young
She was an almana.
Who would take her? Who would take her? She was a Moabiyah. Who would take her? What was her problem? She was a poor lady. She had no income. She had no land, right? She was from Moab. What was her chances of getting married? especially if you have your sights set on the Gadol Adol and the richest man, Boaz. Okay? Vayomer Eleho, Tomer Eleho, so Ruth answers her. This is the debate going on in Ruth's mind. Okay? How is your ksiv kri with a lie?
It's not printed here.
The word a lie is not even there, correct?
But that couldn't be.
But it's a printed there.
That's the printer.
Oh, you think it's the printer's fault?
How can it be just eliminated?
Not necessary. It's easy.
That's true. That's really not necessary.
Not necessary.
A lie, though pronounced, is not written in the text to convey that even if Naomi's instructions had not been for her benefit and addressed directly to her, Rus would have carried them out nevertheless, simply because Naomi asked her to do this.
In the real Megillah, it's really eliminated.
Yes, in the real Megillah, okay, the Baal Korah has to know to say the word a lie, even though it's not there. Really. Okay? Okay. So Naomi says to Rus, take the risk. And Rus responds, I'm going to take the risk. All right?
Well, until now, she followed Nomi, everything that Nomi said she did.
But now she's asking her to really do something
Yeah.
that's out of character. But Tored Hagoren, Tered Hagoren, she went down to the threshing floor, Vata'as, and she did, Kichola Shetzibata Chamosa. Right? She went down, right? But she changed something. So she told what the Rashi tells us is that instead of preparing herself, bathing herself, anointing herself, dressing herself before she went down and then she did that afterwards. Okay?
That doesn't make sense.
Why doesn't it make sense?
Because she was supposed to be out for food, like you said.
So she didn't. So the question is why? All right. Ruth prepared herself only after she went to the refreshing pool, so that she wouldn't be molested on the way down there. Somebody would see her and possibly grab her. Okay.
But it says that she went down.
Also, if she had to travel there, what was the purpose of taking the bath and dressing up? She would get dirty from the trip.
Why would she have a place to get all ready in the garden? She didn't have a place to get ready.
She found a little spot and then she did all of that.
That doesn't make sense.
Rashi. Okay.
No, but that's not right. It says that she laid down.
Okay. All right. Let's take it back. It doesn't change the story really. She got herself all ready for him, okay? Okay. All right. Further. So, as evening falls, after all the workers season the fields, the workers initiate, it's a celebration. A party goes on there, right? They drink, they eat, they drink, they party, they've worked hard. This is the culmination of months and months of planting, harvesting, bundling, gathering it. And when it's all over, there's a certain joy of the season ending. And this joy is generally celebrated with good food, good drinking, people getting almost inebriated. And that's the scene that she is walking into. By Yochal Boaz ate, by Yesht, he drank, by Yitavli Bo. Yitavli Bo generally is when getting a little bit tipsy maybe, right? Okay. By Yavo Lishkab B'Tseor Ramah, he came to lie down at the end of the stack of grain. By Tovo Valot. So she came Valot secretly. quietly, stealthily. All right? Vatigal Margalosov Vatishkov. So what does she do? She sees where he's laying down. I want you to look very closely at this word Margalosov, because the spelling of this word is going to change and is going to teach us something, okay? The translation, the simple translation about the Gal Margalosov Vatishkov, what did she do?
Uncover his feet.
She uncovered his feet. But Margalosov has other meanings also. Correct?
What the other one do? What the other one?
But the Gal Margalosov, what is a Margalosov? His jewels. Margalosov could be jewelry, pearls. So without getting risque, what do men, Shabtai will tell you, what do men consider their pearls and their jewels? Vatishkav Margalosov. Okay? What Rus does here is she uncovers his sexual organ.
Wow, that was very.
That's what she does here, according to everybody. She uncovers, right? This is really, really bold, right?
Somebody that she never even met.
She met him. She's spoken to him. I would say it's maybe something you don't do on a first date, but she knows him, right? Right? So he's asleep. Picture this. He's asleep. She comes down. She didn't completely. She just uncovered his vital parts. How could that be?
I mean, if that's the way who said that? The Gemara said that? Who explains it like that?
All the Mefarshim. Right. They say the question is, what exactly did Ruth uncover? Okay. So one Mefarish says, what's a gal? A gal.
Wave.
A gal is a wave?
Yeah.
What is a shift?
No, the gal is the wave.
A shift also is a gal. What is a gal? Eid hagal hazeh.
Oh, it's a mountain of stone.
Okay, a mountain of stones. Could also be a shift in my dictionary. So she uncovered what? A gal. What's a mountain of stones? It's a nice way of saying what she uncovered. Okay? All right. Okay. Euphemistically, Rus uncovered his genitals. Given all that we have learned about Rus, she is doing what is out of character for her, going against her very nature.
Even the translation says uncover his feet.
Vayihi b'chatzi halayla. Remember those three words. Vayihi b'chatzi halayla. Whenever you get it, something momentous is about to happen, right? Vayihi b'chatzi halayla v'Hashem hikoko b'chol b'eretz Mitzrayim. Right? Was it Vayihi b'chatzi halayla and Achashverosh woke up, couldn't sleep? Oh no, Balayla hazeh nada doshnasim. It wasn't exactly Vayihi b'chatzi halayla. Okay. All right. Vayecharad. Now imagine the scene. You are the Gadol Hador. You are Rebbe Yoshev. You're the Gadol Hador, right? And you're fast asleep. And it's nighttime. Dark. There were no lights in those days, right? And all of a sudden, Vayecharad ho'ish vayilo face. Something wakes him up in the middle of the night. He has a sense that something's not right. He's frightened, right? Now you're the Gadol Hador and you wake up and all of a sudden you've got Torah learning and everything, and then there's a woman who is laying.
At his feet, because it repeats twice. So
It doesn't exactly repeat twice. Look at the spelling of the word Margalosov. Look at the spelling the first time and look at the spelling the second time. By you, it's the same. Look at the first time Margalosov, the pasuk before.
I am looking.
The spelling here is the same.
It is.
The same.
On this page.
The same on here.
There should be a yud.
Half you have the same thing in the second time.
Well-
In the sheets, it's the same. Do you have the sheets? You don't have the sheets. Oh, you have the sheets. Okay, in the sheets, it's the same.
Sheets, it's the same. Huh? Well, I have a Megillah that's not the same. Okay.
Just talking about the sheets, I don't know about.
How do you write?
Yeah.
She's always right.
So, yeah, okay. All right. In the Megillah, the words are spelled differently. There's an extra yod. And from this extra yod, they also learned that she didn't uncover his feet. Okay? Okay.
I was there.
Right?
I don't understand though.
Oh, who cares?
I don't know who cares. It's a big difference. If it's the feet or the other feet.
I don't know why they couldn't have left it alone. Why translate this? I never knew that.
You have to
I
explain
thought she
everything.
just uncovered his feet and later, that's what he said.
If I would have learned it that way, you wouldn't be having such a good time now, would you? It wouldn't be having any conversation
He
here.
didn't invent it, but I don't understand why.
Why they have to
All
change
this is
it?
necessary because
Because in the Megillah itself, the word Margalosov is spelled differently both times. So Mefarshim say, why would the word Margalosov be spelled differently both times?
Most of them without the yod, is that what you're saying?
Once with the yod and once without a yod. Okay.
from that they learned that Microsoft means that.
So v'hoyu letotafos beineinecha. Why don't they just leave it alone? Do you wear your tefillin between your eyes? V'hoyu liyosa yodcha. Why do you wear it on the fleshy part of your muscle? Why?
Not yet. It's not-
Why don't they just leave it alone? Let everybody put tefillin on where they want to put tefillin on.
It's necessary.
Why is it necessary?
Because they have to tell you.
Because you're used to it being necessary, because that's the way you do it. And there's one place in the Torah where the word Yodcha is spelled Yod Daled Chav Hey. Yodcha. And from this Yodcha, from this different spelling, what do we learn? That you put it on the weaker hand. For most of us, that's the left hand, the hand we don't write with. That's why you put tefillin on your hand that you don't write with. So why don't they leave it alone? Okay. All right. So Boaz, what now? A normal well, there's no normal people in this room. So Bob, now you're the Gadol Adol, right? You wake up in the middle of the night, okay, and some woman is grabbing you by the genitals, right? What is your response? What is your Boaz now? What is your response going to be?
What are you doing?
Huh?
What are you doing?
You must start.
You could very maliciously, utter a curse or something, right?
You may think he's a hacker, because like you said, there are other hackers.
So Vayom Miyot, he says to her, who are you? And she says, Vatoma Ruch Anochi Rus Amosecha. Okay, I am Rus. Uforashta Chinofecha Amoscha Ki Goel Oto.
That's not the way.
What a way on a first date, right? What is she saying to him, Rus? Uforashta Chinofecha Amoscha. Huh? Marry him, right? How do you know that? Or she says, spread your cloth over me.
It's a nice.
Oh, that one you'll accept, Sam.
Because you're so protected.
Huh? What does it mean? It means cover me up. That's like, if I read it, it says cover me up.
To spread
Why
your,
shall I spread your wings over?
over me, it's an expression, I want to go under your influence. It means marry.
Yeah, meaning protect me.
Okay, thank you,
Protect me, take care
because
of
you're
me.
a Goel.
Protect me. She doesn't
So when we go to chuppah, what have we got above us? V'ratztach and ofecha, right? Possibly this is where this whole thing comes from. Have, okay? So Ruth is saying, I'm Rus and I want to marry you. That's what she's saying to him, right? She's not giving him a chance at all to, right? Okay? And if you don't want to marry me, she's telling him you're a goel. Because being a goel does not necessarily mean that you have to perform yibum, that you have to marry. So I want to end with this, okay, and we'll pick up next week. What is a goel? Take a look at your handouts in the back, number 4. It talks about a goel. Okay? I hope I have it here because everything else has been messed up. Okay. This is from Vayikra, Pashas Bahar. Ki yamoch achicha. Your brother becomes poor. Mocha me'achuz so. And they've had to sell off his possessions, right? This is what happened to Naomi, right? Her possessions had to be sold off. She wasn't there. There was a famine. She ran away. Uvah goalo, hakorove love. A goel has to come forward, a redeemer. The goal is mimkaro chiv, and he has to redeem it, right? What happens? The ish. What happens if there's a person, ki lo yelo goel, just doesn't happen to have any relatives around. The hisigo yodo, and he becomes, fortunes change over a period of time, and he has some money, okay? And he has enough money for himself to become the Redeemer's property. So then there's a formula, that you have to, value it again. A reappraisal of the land is done. All right. So the bottom line is, the Torah is very, very important, both with Yibum and Goel, that people have a means of support. And land was the means of support in those days. So we see that there is a process now of Goel, which the Torah has set up, as in want of there being, a government largesse and handouts, like we're going to have another one again soon. The Torah provided for the situation. So she's saying to him, if you don't want to marry me, if you don't want to perform Yibum, you still have a responsibility of being a Goel. Okay? We'll pick up here next week. Thank you. I have to bring in a Megillah, it seems, to question all these questions of spelling.